Good morning, fans, and welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And we're back here on a Friday morning for another episode of our podcast. And we're looking ahead to the Stillwater Regional for the Nebraska baseball team. We got some recruiting news for football and basketball, and we will touch on that. But before we do, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, get into the comments section. That helps us out. And Danny, how you doing this morning?
Good. A little bit tired from all the basketball playoff games, but I'm doing good. It's good to be back with you. It feels like we haven't done a show, and let's see, we did one Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? No, we did one. Did we? No, we did one Monday. That's right, Monday. So it
Yeah,
feels like
Monday, I think. Yeah.
so it's been a long week, and a lot of news in Husker Nation. But it's good. I like being busy this time of year. There is no dead period in college athletics really anymore, so it's good. It's good.
Yeah, so it's an official visit season. Nebraska is not really doing any official visits this weekend. Their visit weekends are coming up June, I think, 14th and the 21st is basically when they have guys coming in, which is somewhat interesting. Most programs are doing it throughout June, so it's kind of interesting. Nebraska doesn't have anybody coming this weekend, but there is some, important recruiting news. I think to start with official visits getting set up with Chase Lofton and Christian Jones. Christian Jones has set up a visit, I believe, for the 14th. I would think they were trying to get him on the 21st, or at least that's what I would have thought. They would have done that with some of their other bigger recruits, but they have him set up for a visit. I believe he's also going to visit Oklahoma, and I want to say Tennessee. I could be wrong on that, but at any rate, Nebraska essentially in the top three, or it might be USC. I can't quite remember, but
USC.
so Oklahoma, USC, and Nebraska for Christian Jones. And then Chase Lofton, he released basically not necessarily a top four, but he scheduled visits to four different places. So you got Nebraska, Texas A&M, and then I'm blanking on what the other two were. I think it's another SEC. Missouri is one of them. And I'm blanking on the other one. I want to say it's like
Just to
Florida. It's
follow
Florida
up,
State. Florida State. That's
yeah,
who it
just to
is. So.
follow up really quickly on the Christian Jones visit schedule. He's taking a visit to USC on from June 7th to June 9th. Nebraska will get June 14th through the 16th, and then he'll end with Oklahoma on June 21st through the 23rd.
Okay. And then, so then Chase Lofton's going to be, visiting Nebraska, and then he's also going to visit Missouri, which will be this weekend, Florida State, and then also Texas A&M. So those are, two of the top targets on the board, for in-state prospects. So, I feel pretty confident with Chase Lofton, but I still think there's some work to do. And the same with Christian Jones. But, I would be really surprised if, like I said, I'll be surprised if Matt Rule gets beat for an in-state recruit, and I'll believe it when I see it.
And honestly, I would be too. And the only way I'm worried is that Missouri seems to have oodles of money everywhere. So, I mean, there is that. They seem to have mastered the NIL game. But, I think we do stand in a good spot for both Lofton and Jones. Jones visited during the spring game, and then he also, has taken a couple other visits prior to that. So I feel good about where they stand. Like you said, it's hard for Matt Rule to get beat on an in-state recruit, and it seems like they've done a good job of sealing the deal on visits. So I'm confident in Nebraska's, abilities to land these two. I don't think it's going to necessarily be easy because, especially in Jones' case, USC and Oklahoma are certainly, no programs to scoff at, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Christian Jones has visited like 11 times now. Chase Lofton's visited Nebraska, I think, 9 times. So definitely have the lead in those regards, in terms of how many times they visited and, how hard they've been recruited. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, they definitely could use, I think another linebacker like Christian Jones. And, they made, like I said many times before, I don't think recruiting shouldn't be based on what your current roster is. You recruit the best players that you possibly can, regardless of position. And so that's what they need to Chase Lofton. It doesn't matter how many tight ends that, they have or whatever, because, that doesn't really make a difference. So, he's sick. I mean, he's a 6'6" prospect. He's a big time player. Christian Jones is a linebacker that runs, sub 11 seconds in the 100. So those are guys that you want on your team. So hopefully Nebraska can get the job done there. And then there was another crystal ball for, running back Jamarian Parker. This is a pretty important one. It's been interesting though because Nebraska has um, been in contact with another running back, Mecky Nelson. He's unranked out of the state of Connecticut, so he's going to be visiting, I believe, next week. And then it's not an official visit; it's an unofficial visit, and then they'll be trying to bring him back. So I know that they got the crystal ball with Jamarian Parker. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with running back, if they're trying to apply a little pressure to Jamarian Parker by bringing Nelson to campus. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm not sure if they're going to take both of them. That would be 3 running backs, although they've only signed 1 running back in the first 2 recruiting classes, so it's definitely a position of need.
I'd be fine with 3. I mean, you talked about how we kind of, it's a position of need, and the fact that Nebraska missed out on Kawan Lacey, and Kawan Lacey decommitted, and you've seen the total injuries have taken on the running back room in previous years. So I would totally be fine with 3. Parker's recruitment's a little bit interesting because this started all the way back in April. There were some crystal ball predictions that were put in at the beginning of April, and he took a visit to Nebraska at the beginning of April, and since then it's been quiet. But at the same time, we were kind of looking at this June 21st official visit date. It's been known for quite a while now. I remember posting something about it in March. So seeing this prediction ahead of the visit is certainly encouraging. He would fit well with the Big 10 or whatever it's going to be, the Big 25 when all is said and done by this point. And he's got a physical running style. He can accelerate, and he's an east-west type of runner, and he can use that acceleration to get to the outside. So, I think he would fit well with what Nebraska's trying to do. And when you look at the current roster, they have 2 senior running backs on the roster currently, in Maurice Mezcua and Ramir Johnson. So there is need for depth there, and adding Parker would definitely be another big get, especially like we've mentioned before, when you consider that Nebraska didn't really land any running backs in the first couple classes to start off.
Yeah, and so I mean, they definitely, Jamarian Parker is a must-land guy, I think, in this class, and they really need to rebuild that room going forward. So hopefully they're able to get him. I know he's also taking a visit to TCU, and Alabama's kind of lurking around there. So just kind of interesting how that recruitment is playing out with the running back room.
Yep.
So at any rate, and then Nebraska did make the top 6 for Douglas Utu on Thursday. So I mean, it's whatever, along with Michigan and some other schools. So I mean, I don't really put too much stock into those things, but I mean, I think that Nebraska is definitely right. I don't know if they're in the lead. I think that Michigan's probably in the lead for Utu, but we'll see. He's visiting there this weekend. I don't know that he has an official visit scheduled with Nebraska. I don't believe he does at this time. So we'll see kind of where that goes from there. But that would be the next step. But it feels to me like they're more on the peripheral with him.
Yeah. I'll be completely honest. Top 6s mean nothing to me. I mean, maybe top 5s or top 3s, but we'll see how it goes. They've done a good job of recruiting offensive linemen over the past couple cycles. And one other recruit that I forgot to mention is wide receiver Raheem Hutchins Jr. He's a four-star wide receiver from Texas. He announced his top 3 on Monday. It included Memphis and Houston. So I'm very interested to see where that goes. There is a lot of depth at wide receiver, but like you said, you don't recruit, based on necessarily positional needs so much as talent, and the staff has, made that very clear. So I honestly like where Nebraska stands with Hutchins, especially when you consider the other 2 programs on his list. And he's a Texas guy. He's rated relatively high, and so I like where Nebraska stands. And someone mentioned to me the other day, don't you always like where Nebraska stands with every single recruit? And I said no. I mean, there's some that I really don't like where we stand, to be completely honest with you. But for Hutchins, I feel pretty confident that Nebraska definitely has a shot and could possibly land him, even with a loaded wide receiver room.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a good feel with David Sanders. I don't think that's happening. I mean, we'll see. He didn't even have the Nebraska hat. I just don't see that happening. So that's one. Yeah, like Douglas Utu, we'll see. Doesn't have any visits set for Nebraska.
Carmo, I don't feel good about
So
either, to be honest with you. The linebacker from Minnesota.
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
as long as they get Christian Jones, I don't think that's that big of a deal.
no. I mean, he'd be nice to have,
But yeah, I mean, they do need to rack up. They need to start getting him some more defensive targets on there, especially like D-line targets. Edge, which they've started to do a little bit, but they definitely need to land another offensive tackle this class, like a good one. And so, if they don't get Broderick Scholl, I'm not sure really where that's going to happen because I don't really see them getting Douglas YouTube. I mean, it's possible. And I really don't see him getting. I don't think David Sanders is going to make it back to campus. So I mean, maybe he will. It's always possible, but that's kind of what I said right after. It's like it was good that they got him this visit and it was positive, but unless you get him back on campus, another 2 times, it's like Michael Terry. They're not going to win the Michael Terry recruitment if he visits 1 time. Like that's just not enough. He's got to get back for probably something in this summer and maybe even if the fall if he takes his recruitment, that deep, but. Right now, it's like, yeah, Nebraska does have the lead, but I just don't believe that 1 visit is going to be enough to win that recruitment.
Yeah, Terry has spoken positively about Nebraska, but I mean, it's also going to be, do they have the money? I mean, let's be honest here.
Yeah, well, he said that NIL was going to be one of the NIL and feeling like a family atmosphere, but he said NIL first, so I thought that was telling. And it's just, he said earlier this week when he did an interview, if I was going to commit today, I would be Nebraska. But I'm always wary about guys who say that because it's like, okay, well, then why aren't you committed then? So I just, I always get wary of guys that, are talking about that too much. And he's from Texas and Texas A&M are going to be hosting him for visits. Oregon's still in the mix. I do think that Nebraska is in a really good spot, though. But I do believe there's a reason why we haven't seen any crystal ball projections or whatever. It's because, it's like if you're in a soccer match and the score is 0-0 and you've had the ball most of the time, it's like, well, you should be winning, but you don't have a goal. So it really doesn't mean much of anything. And that's where Nebraska stands right now with Michael Terry. If we played the first 45 minutes, like they've controlled the ball, they've got it. They've got some attempts, but they haven't got the ball in the net. And so we'll see if they can get it there.
Yeah, we'll see. And, should Nebraska not land Michael Terry, it's going to make that June 21st visit weekend, even more important because Cortez Mills is coming to town. So now, say Nebraska doesn't land Terry, do you shift your focus to Mills?
I mean, I think they're trying to get Mills, but like I said, I just don't see him getting Cortez Mills. I think that's why, you're seeing that other guy, Hutchins or whatever, visiting. And, to me, it's not about, whether Nebraska is going to win that recruitment. It's about whether Nebraska, wants to take that kid on their board. I know where he's ranked, but they don't do, college staffs don't base their, recruiting boards off rankings. So, Memphis, Houston, and Nebraska is not like an overwhelming top 3 for a 4-star recruit. So maybe the ranking doesn't meet the road there. I'm not sure exactly, but so I really feel like that one's going to be one where they kind of slow play it a little bit. And then, if they see, it's going the wrong way with Terry and Mills, then they could make him a take. That's my opinion on it. And the other thing about Michael Terry too is he can play more than one position. I mean, he could play running back. He could play defense. So, he is a true athlete. I mean, he actually had more rushing yards last season than he had receiving yards. He had like 800 rushing yards and like 500 receiving yards. So, like, Michael Terry could be a guy that could actually play running back, which would be insane. He's 6'3", 210, but so he would be one of the best athletes they've ever recruited. I'd love to. I would take both. I mean, if they could get Terry and Cortez Mills, I would take both and kick off another guy on the back end of the commitment. Cut down those. Those 2 dudes are worth it. If you get top 100 guys, I don't care if it's 3 at the same position. Just take them and you'll figure it out.
I'd say, and this is just my personal opinion, that you're gonna have a better chance of getting Terry out of Texas than you're gonna have getting Cortez Mills out of Florida, because Miami is very interested in Mills as well. And, say what you want about Miami and their success on the field, they have a boatload of money off of it. So, I mean, it's going to be very hard for Cortez Mills to leave the state of Florida, I think. And even if he does, there's no doubt that Miami, for example, will make a push. So I like the idea of him coming to Nebraska. I'm not sure if it's going to happen. Same thing with Terry. To be completely honest with you, out of all the 3, I feel better about Hutchins coming to Nebraska, but we'll see. At the very least, it's not like, oh, we have to get Terry or else the wide receiver position is completely screwed. Oh, we have to get Mills or else the wide receiver position is completely screwed. Now we've built depth and now we can kind of play with our options a little bit, and we don't have to, hinge on one commitment in order to fill the wide receiver room. And in that respect, that's refreshing because we haven't always been able to do that in previous years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these, recruitments work out. Like we were talking about running back, and I was reading something from Brian Munson, and he kind of offered a Husker Online the same take where he doesn't see Nebraska taking Nelson and Parker. He doesn't see him taking 3 running backs. So I do think it's interesting that Mackie Nelson is coming in for this visit, and I'm going to be watching very closely for him to take an official visit, because I think if he takes an official visit, that tells me that Nebraska does not feel that confident in Jamarian Parker. I know what the crystal ball says, but to me, something doesn't add up there. Something doesn't quite add up, because usually when you're getting a crystal ball, you're moving toward a commitment, and if that was happening, I don't see Nebraska, bringing in Mackie Nelson for this visit and kind of having this offer and doing all this stuff with them. So there's something there, and either they're going to move on and take Nelson and Parker's going to go somewhere else, or they're trying to, say, hey, like, we're going to bring in Mackie Nelson if you're not going to commit, this month. So I don't know. Something's going to happen at running back this month, and if it's not Jamarian Parker, it wouldn't shock me if they took a commitment from Mackie Nelson, especially. If he takes an official visit, I would watch it. He's one that, because he doesn't have a ton of major offers. Nebraska's like, Syracuse is talking to him, and UConn's like his second best offer. So if Nebraska offers and takes him, and if he's a take, I would definitely see him committing. There's a good chance, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out with running back. But I don't know. I've been getting the weird vibe with Jamarian Parker ever since they offered Mackie Nelson, and he actually has a crystal ball for Nebraska too. So, which I wrote about a few weeks ago. But so this is, and I'm actually might be from the same guy, Mike Schaefer. I'll have to double check, but and it might be from On3. But I know that he did get a projection for Nebraska. So at any rate, I do think that's interesting on the running back board.
Well, the fact that Parker got crystal balls in April, and we haven't really heard a lot since, is very telling too. And so we'll have to see how that shapes out. At the very least, Nebraska seems to have several plans for a 2025 running back. I would love Parker. Nelson would be great too, but it will be interesting to see how it shakes out because they have struggled at landing and keeping running backs. So, as much as I love Parker, as long as we get a running back, another running back in this class, then I would be, reasonably happy. We need more than one running back in this class, and I don't know if you would take 3. So, to me, I don't think you would, but stranger things have happened.
So let's switch gears here. Wrap up the recruiting talking now. Let's the NCAA baseball tournament will be getting underway today, 2 p.m. Central Time. Nebraska takes on Florida, an unranked team from the SEC. I think they had a losing record. They're 28 and 27 overall, but they are a dangerous team. I think they have like 6 hitters who've hit, like 13 home runs this year, but their team ERA is quite a bit higher. It's like in the 6 range, I think, where Nebraska's like in the 4s. So it does seem like the Huskers have the pitching advantage. Brett Sears is going to get the start today. So it's really, when you get to the postseason, it really is about pitching and defense and all that type of stuff. And you've got, Brett Sears today, Mason McConaughey tomorrow, hopefully against Oklahoma State, because the key here, it's this weird bracket, where you have to, it's the true double elimination. So you've got to be, essentially, you want to be the first team into the championship game. That's your best path to move on, especially, on the road here. Like if Nebraska beats Florida and then loses to Oklahoma State, they would have to turn around and win 3 straight games, 2 against Oklahoma State, to advance to the Super Regional. And that's going to be a tall order. They did do it. They beat Indiana twice last weekend, but that was on their home field. So that definitely helped. But it's been interesting because there's been people talking up Nebraska baseball. There was one expert, I'm blanking on the name right now. I can find it, but he had Nebraska projected to make his College World Series. They do have a pretty good, bracket. There's Clemson and Vanderbilt, are kind of on the opposite side of them if they could get to the Super Regional. It kind of sets up well. I believe that they do have the pitching to make a run. With all the guys, Will Walsh, Christo, Brockett, some of those other guys really gave them some solid innings last week, and that should definitely bolster their confidence going into this weekend. And it's not going to be easy. Oklahoma State and Florida especially are 2 very good offensive teams, but Nebraska's been raking pretty well, for these past couple of weeks. So I'm feeling confident, and it's going to be fun. And you know what? I'm ready to have my heart broken again. So let's see what happens.
Seems like that's been a theme this year, hasn't it? Second ever meeting between Nebraska and Florida. The first one being, June 19th, 2005. Florida defeated Nebraska 7-4 in that one. Liam Peterson will be taking them out for Florida. He's 2-4 with a 5.83 ERA. So I think Nebraska's bats will have a good shot to make some noise in this one. Obviously, Brett Sears takes the mound for Nebraska, and when you look at this lineup, like you just alluded to, I mean, Florida has a ton of power. They have 2.1 home runs per game. They rank fourth nationally, fourth in the SEC, with 116 home runs. And that's good for seventh nationally as well. So, I mean, these two lineups can hit, and I think what it's all going to come down to, and this may be kind of a no-brainer, is the pitching. If the pitching can give Nebraska what they did in the Big Ten tournament with that type of innings, the amount of innings that they threw, and the amount of clean innings that they threw, then that's important. And I also think it's important to get off to a fast start on the mound. Nebraska struggled at times early in finding their rhythm on the mound, and against a team like Florida, that cannot happen. And you mentioned the 28-27 record. This is SEC competition. I mean, they lost to Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament, and Vanderbilt's no slouch of a program. So that 28-27, in my opinion, is a little bit deceiving.
Yep. Yeah. It's I know that people were talking about it's a tough draw. Anytime you get an SEC team, it's a tough draw. That's just the way it is. But I like this draw for Nebraska in the sense that they didn't have to play a top seed from the SEC. They didn't. They're playing an Oklahoma State team, which this is their third straight year hosting a regional. So this is a very accomplished program. They're very hungry in terms of Oklahoma State trying to get to that super regional and getting back to Omaha. So it's both of the, there's a lot of teams kind of pushing for that this weekend. So that's interesting. It's survive and advance, and we'll see what happens. I feel good about about today with Brett Sears and tomorrow with McConaughey. I think that winning those two games and putting yourself in that position is going to be their best path forward. So not that they can't come back and do it, but these first two games I think are going to set the tone for the postseason for Nebraska, especially today with Brett Sears.
Absolutely. And on a side note, I hate how it's on ESPN Plus. I know I always complain about streaming services and stuff like that, but man, they really make it hard to watch baseball. I mean, we ran into this problem during the regular season when they had a bunch of games on all sorts of networks, and so I'm gonna have to figure that out, or figure out what to do. But I'm excited. I mean, this team
turned into the radio broadcast.
The radio. I'm going to feel like an old guy. Sorry, Chris, an old guy. I'm going to have to listen to the radio and eat my peanuts and complain about millennials. But no, I'm excited to see what they can do. I mean, this is a team that has gotten hot at the right time with the bats. The pitching's been stabilized, and they're coming off a very kind of emotional week, winning the Big Ten tourney. So anything can happen in June.
Yeah, and you get momentum, and I mean, anything can happen, but that momentum is really important. Yeah. So they've got it right now. Hopefully, they can move. They're like that team that in Major League Baseball that won in the wild card round or whatever. Now is going to the divisional series, and sometimes you see those teams kind of keep moving on and advancing. So sometimes it does help when you get on a run like that. Not that Nebraska needed that run to make the NCAA tournament, right. Seeing the other teams make it, but it was awesome to see them win that Big Ten championship. But I would love to see them, make it back to Omaha for. I don't even know when the last time they did it. I have no idea. It's been forever, but it would be awesome to get there. So that starts again today, 2 Eastern or 2 Central, excuse me. Yeah, ESPN Plus. If you have it, that's cool. If not, Huskers.com. And hopefully this weekend there'll be some more games on ESPN. I'm sure there will be. It's just, it's kind of crazy how that schedule works out. But at any rate, the last thing we wanted to touch on, some transfer portal stuff with Nebraska basketball. 2 scholarship spots still available, and the kid from UCLA, so Berka Buyuk-Tungel, I've looked up his pronunciation. It's even worse than I thought. It's Buyuk-Tungel. That's how you pronounce
okay.
Yeah, Buyuk-Tungel, which is not how it looks at all.
And how do you do and how do you say his first name? Berka?
Berka, yeah. Berka Buyuk-Tungel. Yep. So anyway,
there you go.
there's a C in there, so apparently I'm not sure how that works. That, but so there is, Robin Washout of Husker Online projected him to Nebraska,
Interesting.
and that was like a week or so ago, and
Yeah.
so he said he's still sticking with that. There's some new interest with Nebraska with Trevon Brazil.
Mm,
It's a 6'10" forward from Arkansas who's going into the transfer portal market. It's possible he could go back to Arkansas, but I mean, most of the time that usually doesn't happen. Um, so he's a 6'10" guy, probably would come in and start right away. I
yeah.
mean, the way that I look at it, they do have 2 scholarships available, so they could get both guys. They're both bigs. I mean, so I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but you can never have too many big guys, and it would be nice to see him, kind of at that full scholarship load. They weren't ever there last year, and Buka, whatever. Buyuk Tungel he's only played 1 year, so he's got multiple years of eligibility. So
Oh man, we are on fire with our names today.
stop recruiting guys with weird names.
It's
Not that tough,
actually,
Fred.
you know what? The guys
Just
with
if
the
you're
tough
like,
names are usually ballers.
yeah,
So
that's true.
Thorben Jarnson sticks out to mind
Yeah, that's
from
true.
back in the day. But Brazil is interesting in the sense that he can, play both the inside and the outside. Nebraska reportedly has the highest bid right now for whatever that means, and Kentucky is also interested. And so, when you look at how this roster shapes out, I was thinking about this the other day, and I totally forgot to message you and say this, but I think with the way the roster stands right now, we are better than where we were last year, and I think the emphasis on size is important too. And when you look at a guy like Brazil, he can space the floor as well as drive to the hoop. So, in this offense, have him kind of play not necessarily solely on the perimeter, but if Braxton Mee is on the floor, for example, you have a lengthy guy like Brazil kind of on the perimeter. He can definitely fit into this offense in that way. He can also drive to the rim. He has good touch around the rim. So, like I said, I don't know what highest bid means in terms of our chances of landing him, but as we're learning with the football program, money talks. So I'm glad that Nebraska is making an effort to land Brazil, and hopefully the UCLA guy whose name I won't attempt to pronounce, hopefully we can land both of them, and then that should, complete the roster. And honestly, a pretty good roster, I might add, and a very busy and successful offseason, all things considered.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with Brazil because St. John's and Georgetown are in the mix, and
Yep.
those Big East teams seem to have a crap ton of NIL money, because they don't have football programs most of the time. So it's like all their booster money goes
Yep.
to basketball and NIL. So we'll see if that works out. It would be nice to get one of those 2 guys, and I think just another big would really solidify things. But I do like the roster. To me, like I said, I think you got May. I'm totally blanking on the kid that they got from North Dakota State. Is
Andrew
it?
Morgan?
Yeah, Morgan. I think he'll start, and then Gary, Bryce Williams, and then I think it's going to be Raleigh Wooster. I think you'll see Griffiths come off the bench, a Segan come off the bench. You could move it around. Gary could play some 4 too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you could do it. But that would be, to me, that's the best lineup that they have, unless you really feel strongly about Juwan Gary as the 4. And to me, moving Gary up would be more about getting a spot in the lineup for a Segan or Gavin Griffiths. But
Which I would totally be fine with as well. I mean, I feel like Griffiths and Asijian have the potential to start, so that gives you the flexibility there.
yeah, I think either of them could start too, or they could be very similar to I think one of them could start, one of them could play the CJ Wilcher role, or I think it's just going to be matchup based. And Juwan Gary came off the bench for like the first 20 games last year, so.
Yep.
And Bryce Williams came off the bench too. So, I mean, I think there's going to be some moving parts, but those top 7, 8 guys, I think are all going to play, 20 to 30 minutes. So whether it's start or bench or whatever, like those guys are going to play consistently, and they can still add kind of one more piece to that group, I think. And that's going to be Fred Hoiberg's objective here over the next week. So, or over the next couple of weeks, I guess I should say. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there, you guys, but make sure that you're following the baseball team. Hopefully on Monday, we'll be talking about Nebraska, advancing to the super regionals. Some people have even suggested, if Vanderbilt could knock off Clemson in that super regional, then if Nebraska knocked out, won theirs or in their regional, then it would be a Nebraska Vanderbilt super regional. And since neither of those teams is seeded, they would have to decide where to host that. I'm not sure how that would happen, but it's possible in that crazy scenario that you could get a regional in Nebraska.
Is it going to be like the coin flip in Friday Night Lights, where they have to decide the Texas high school playoffs, and they have to do the coin flip in the dark and a secret location or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work out, but
maybe straighten the schedule or something.
If it's,
something like that.
I don't know, but if it's based off attendance, I know Nebraska will get it. So we'll see. I don't know how they work that out. I don't know if it's based on seeding or any of that stuff. But
and side note on that, I believe Omaha got the go ahead to host the Big Ten tournament until 2027. So
yeah, they did. So that'll be cool going forward. That's a good venue for that. So
absolutely.
All right, guys, we'll wrap it up there. We're not doing the Saturday chat this weekend, just to give you the heads up. We're going to postpone those till the season gets started. But we will be back on Monday. Check out HuskerBigRed.com. Please like and subscribe. We super appreciate it. Have a great weekend. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.